Introduction by Shelley Hitz. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1, New King James Version. Faith. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of faith? I often think of faith as stepping out into the unknown, the evidence of things not seen, and ultimately giving up my control. One example of faith is jumping off a high dive. My husband, CJ, tells a story of his first experience with the high dive when he was only 8 or 9 years old. In that phase of his life, he loved going to the public swimming pool in his small town in the summer with his friends. As is common with most public pools, his pool had both a low dive and a high dive. One day, giving in to peer pressure, he decided to jump off of the high dive for the first time. Even today, he admits that he has a healthy fear of heights. However, on that particular summer day, his fear of heights got the best of him. As he climbed the ladder of the notorious high dive and saw how far he had to jump, fear took over. He stood on the high dive and contemplated whether or not he wanted to take the risk and jump. Ultimately, taking that step of faith would mean giving up his control and overcoming his fear. However, even with all his friends watching, he chickened out and slowly climbed back down the ladder of the high dive to the jeering of his friends. Haven't we all experienced something like this in our lives as well? A moment where we have to decide if we are willing to step out in faith. The good news about this story is that it does not end there. Later that day, CJ mustered up the courage to try the high dive once again. At this time, despite his fear, he jumped. And you know what happened? He loved it. Not only did he land safely in the water without injury, but he also experienced the thrill of his lifetime. He then proceeded to jump off the high dive repeatedly for the rest of the day. In fact, he says eventually he became so daring that he would do all kinds of tricks off the high dive, including a 1.5 twist dive. What a great illustration of faith. Jumping off a high dive is simply one picture of stepping out in faith and the joy that comes as a result. In this book, you will read 21 different stories of faith from various authors. Sometimes the stories may focus on coming to faith in Christ for the first time. Other stories share lessons learned about faith during a difficult time. Ultimately, we hope and pray that God uses these stories to inspire and encourage you in your own walk of faith. That by reading this book, your eyes will be fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. Hebrews 12:2. Allowing Him to strengthen your faith. Because without faith, it is impossible to please Him. For he who comes to God must believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. Hebrews 11:6, New King James Version.